Morning. Praise the Lord. Like Wally said, about 2 months ago, I was in my comfort zone. I was in cruise control, everything was good, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of days, I am given a diagnosis of potentially two cancers, one in my bladder, one in my kidney. So that is a come to Jesus moment, and if there's one, and immediately start praying and asking why, what's going on, you have all the doubts, and what have I done? Why don't you serve this? This is the wrong time. Do it later after Christmas. So I'm praying and asking the why, and then all of a sudden I get this feeling of calm and God just telling me, I'm in control, trust me. And all of a sudden I switched, and all of a sudden I was not anxious. I was at peace, and I was going through the process, and it's a difficult process. And thank God that I have my wife and family and friends and all of you praying. And a friend of mine came to the house maybe a day or two after he found out, and because my prayer was, God, tell me what this means. What is the purpose of this? You are in control. You have this situation, and I need to know what it means. It's got to be more than just being a cancer patient. There's got to be more to this. So this friend of mine, who is a man of God, he came over to the house and said, I prayed all night last night, and God gave me a word for you. And I'm not one to give words because I think that this is something very serious, but I have something for you, and I want to tell you that you're a blessed man. And I'm looking at him and said, what are you talking about? I said, you're a blessed man. God is giving you this opportunity so you can get closer to him. And God takes these moments and uses these situations. And this is for you. This is for you to get closer to him. You are distracted. You're in the fast lane. You are in the comfort zone. And he has more for you than that. And this is the moment, and he's using this for you. And the other word that I got for you is that you're going to be healed. There's nothing for you to worry about. And there's a lot more coming after this. So he left the house, and I'm praying, and we're talking, and I start to understand, what is the purpose of the process. And as I went deeper into prayer, and I realized, I think that's the message. That is what I was looking for. That is the opportunity to get closer to him and have more intimacy and a greater path. And obviously I was going in the wrong direction, and he wants me to shift and go somewhere else. And then Sunday morning you preach on pivot, how we need to sometimes change, and God uses situations so we can redirect our effort and our work. And I realized I couldn't be here, but I got the word, and I said, okay, well, that's the second confirmation, that I was in the wrong path, and there's a better one, and God is taking me there. And then Wednesday, when Jeremiah Johnson was here, he had the same word. So I said, okay, God, now that's 2 times. It's very clear. There is something here that is shifting, and I need to trust, and I need to be able to understand what that is. And I have this feeling that there are greater things that are coming. I think Wally talked this morning a little bit about that, and that the excitement trying to find out what this is. It's a great feeling. So obviously I'm very thankful. To wrap up the story, I'm cancer free. So the potential cancer in my bladder was not cancer. It was just a tumor and a small cyst that they took out. The one in my kidney was cancer, so I don't have a right kidney anymore. But with the kidney, the tumor was taken out. There's no cancer around where the kidney was, so I don't need to do anything else. I just need to come see him again in 6 months. So I'm very grateful for that. So that was the gift that I received right before Thanksgiving. So I was able to share with the family on that day, and I'm still very thankful, and I will be thankful for the rest of my life. And I'm thankful for all your prayers. I know that all of you were praying. Pastors came to pray with me many times. Chris has the great team praying. There are people praying in Cuba and all over the world. And I'm very thankful for that. And that is a moment where you appreciate the body of believers. And sometimes we take it for granted. And sometimes we barely say hello to each other when we see each other here. But in a moment like this, it's extremely important. And all of you came through, and I'm very grateful for that. I will never forget that. And I thank the Lord for you, your families, your lives, and your prayers. And that is my testimony.
That was a great testimony. Mine is certainly a little different and taken a little longer, but a praise report nonetheless. But my journey to become completely healthy and well is still somewhat ongoing. 2 years ago, almost exactly, it was end of November, early December of 2017, I was, like Aldo, unexpectedly diagnosed with advanced stage 4 prostate cancer. It was designated stage 4 because at the time of diagnosis, based on testing and scanning, that the tumor had escaped already, even though it was asymptomatic, outside the prostate gland, and it invaded the local tissues, the lymph nodes, and the bone. And now, for most men, prostate cancer is discovered in very early stages, in fact 90%. So it's very curable through surgeries or some other means. However, once the tumor escapes from the gland into the tissues, particularly the lymph nodes, it's a whole different animal. In fact, there is no cure. My wife and I, we traveled the country during those next month or so, visiting experts, and basically got the same opinion, that there was no cure, immunotherapy, chemotherapy, radiation surgery, robotics. This was not amenable as it would be in other earlier forms of the disease. And so, in fact, when what they offered basically at that time was what's called palliative care. That means they'll be around to check on you, do some testing, and if you have pain, we'll give you pain medicine. If you have an infection, we'll treat you for that, or arrange for hospice when the time comes. Because in prostate cancer, unlike some other cancers, once it escapes out of the gland, it can proceed very, very rapidly. In fact, my wife pressed one of the experts in the country for, are there other things that could be done? He kind of looked us both in the eyes and said, look, there's nothing else can be done. Your life expectancy is 2 years, if that. So get your life in order, and you will die from prostate cancer. Now, I'm a doctor who has had to give that diagnosis to other people before, so it struck home pretty well to me and the family. Now, since that time, the journey has been fairly challenging, both physically and spiritually. However, I can say that I've now passed that expiration 2-year warranty date. And I'm still standing. I guess I'm, as a pastor would say, I'm into extra innings, overtime. Spiritually, there's a lot that's a whole subject by itself, and in fact, Beverly felt that might be another book to write. I've learned a lot through the years, and when you have a diagnosis like this, this is where faith rubber meets the road. And I have found that it's very difficult to continue claiming and declaring God's word over and over, which I was doing, hundreds of scriptures that are there, in the face of contrary medical information that says you're getting worse. Very difficult to walk that walk. Nonetheless, I kept at it, and the word does say that the word of God is a hammer that breaks the rock to pieces. So you have to keep, just like a mason may hit something 99 times, it's that 100th time that may do it. So I felt that's what it was, and of course with encouragement from the pastors and every prayers from here and like all around the world, this has been very beneficial. I've had several hospitalizations. I've had numerous tests and treatments and scans. I've been in more MRI and CT tunnels than you want. I think I'm radiating from that. And I did some, mostly alternative and holistic therapies, since not much conventional around, but some conventional therapies as well. And in September, which is one of my low points, doctors track prostate cancer using a blood test called a PSA level. Any of you older gentlemen know what that is? Okay, there's a few of you here in the assembly. Normally doctors like to keep that PSA level less than 5. In September, my level was 3,500. And that reflected on CT scan spread to many organs in the body. Well, and it looked pretty bleak. In fact, I appreciated Pastor Blake and Jay. They visited me in my home several times, in the hospital. I thought it was really to get me the last rites, but for Catholic tradition it came out of. But it was really to anoint with oil and do all the steps, if you will, spiritually. Then miraculously, just last month, I started to feel stronger. People noticed some difference. And I call it my Thanksgiving miracle, because on November 27th, I went back to labs, and my PSA level, which again was 3,500, had dropped to 11. And that just doesn't happen. In fact, this past week on Thursday and Wednesday, I saw a urologist and an oncologist, and they were both astonished how well it had dropped, how much it had dropped, plus some other labs that were abnormal were also normalizing, as well as sodium and hemoglobin, things like that. And I also, because of urinary obstruction, I had a catheter for 4 months. Now, Aldo told me he had a catheter for 3 days and couldn't stand it. So I've had it for 4 months, but that was removed just a few days ago. I'm doing well there. That was for urinary obstruction. That seems to be resolving. And also from the walking, I could barely walk 20 steps because the tumor had involved the femur and the pelvis. But now I'm walking, last week, about 2 miles a day, very slowly. Can't go upstairs yet, so we kind of move our bedroom down to the lower floor, but that's what it takes. And also, I haven't driven for 4 months, and I drove today to church for the first time. So I think the journey is still ongoing for me, and I appreciate all the prayers that everyone has done, and hopefully this will, being a medical person myself, doctors, there's a lot of criticism that, well, doctors do this and that. Well, they're speaking of the natural. I had to give diagnosis to patients with cervical cancer, ovarian, and breast coming out of the female field. I had to give that. You have to give information. So that 2-year mark was not inaccurate. In fact, some studies show once cancer's progressed to the bone of the prostate, it's 3 months to live. So again, it's just a natural versus that. But again, the faith walk is there, and there are challenges. But I'm optimistic and actually feel quite good now.
Amen. Praise God. Wow. That is awesome. We praise God for walking with us through all of our hardest and darkest moments. And at the end today, we'll have a time of prayer and just anointing. If you do need a touch, if you do need to be encouraged, if you do need to be healed, we'll lay hands on you and pray for you, and just continue to believe that Jesus loves to heal. That's just what he loves to do. In his presence, he releases healing. That's just who he is. And even in the midst of it, as Dr. Tom and Aldo both said, though they had the daunting, diagnosis, it caused them to press into Jesus. And no matter what the outcome physically, the reward is a closer relationship with Christ. Now, obviously, there's healing along with that, and we believe for that. But Jesus, He is the most excellent. He is the good. If we can draw near to Him, even in the hardest and darkest moments, He truly is our reward. And as as we're praying about the vision for next year, my mom and I have been talking, and she suggested this idea of 2020 associated with vision. How many of you wear glasses? Quite a few of you wear glasses, right? On your eyes. You know what it's like to not wear glasses. I have been blessed to not have to wear glasses. As my dad says, yet, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Whatever false diagnosis that is. But when you don't have your glasses on, the world around you is blurred, or it's out of focus. You know, as I was thinking about that this morning, and even as you guys were, giving your testimony, and just how we've been in Psalm 27, and I haven't been able to move on, I had to believe to see. I had to believe to see. When we put our trust in Jesus, it enables us to have a correct vision. When we surrender our own agenda, when we surrender our own plans, it aligns our vision, it puts those glasses on, and we're able to see the good things, even in the midst of the difficult situations. We're able to see the good things, which is not just healing, which is not just financial blessing, but the good thing, the best thing, the most excellent thing is Jesus. I had to believe to see more of him. That's the good thing. It can't just be material blessing and success, which that comes along with it. But you can't get beyond Jesus. You can't get beyond it. As Paul says, whether I live or die, it's unto Jesus. Now it's easy for me to say up here in perfect health. But we have to believe that he is that mark, that he is our source, that he is our joy. So 2020, the Lord's going to give us 2020 vision for the upcoming year. So where we're at today, we're going to continue to look and focus on Jesus, his first coming, as we're preparing to enter into this season, which is all about his first coming, right? In case you were misled that it's just about giving presents and hanging up lights and putting gifts under your tree and fighting over people on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, etc. You don't have to fight people on Cyber Monday unless you're sending out like viruses on your computer. Needless to say, I was doing a little bit of that, but not too much. In case you had forgot what the season was truly about, I'm here to remind you and continue to remind you, it's all about him. It's all about Jesus. Your entire life, your entire energy, your strength, your mental faculties, all are to engage with the most beautiful man, the most excellent thought, the highest word that we could ever engage with, and that is Jesus. I don't think you understand. I've been meditating on it. It's that we can even say his name. That you even have the privilege, that he would even allow us to say his name, God's name, that we could even call him our Father, is beyond comprehension. That the God who created everything took on flesh so he could walk with us, so we could call on him, so we could enter in his presence, so we could speak forth his name in time of trouble, is incomprehensible. It's incomprehensible. But he counted us worthy to do it. As Hebrews chapter 1 and 2 declare, that he did not consider it a shame to declare them brethren in the assembly. Meaning he's not ashamed to call you his brother or sister. He's not ashamed to declare that you're now part of his family. You're part of the family. You've been made, like it says in the mob movies. You've been made. There's no escape. It's only through death is the escape. You've been brought into the family. There's something thicker than water. It's the blood of Jesus Christ, which has now made a way. And I want to look at kind of the expectation in the plan of God in bringing Jesus into the world. A lot of times in this church we focus on the second coming of Christ, but I want to focus on the first coming of Christ, if that's okay. You guys let me, right? Now he is coming again, and a lot of these prophecies in the Old Testament have a twofold meaning, predicting his first coming and also his second coming. But I want to focus on his first coming. I want to look at the plan of God and the complexity of that plan that God unraveled to bring in his son, to give us the most precious gift. Because I think a lot of times in our lives, we get distracted, or God doesn't speak, or He delays, and we forget that God has a plan, and then we try to do it ourselves. We try to add to God's plan. We say, well, we'll just do this little part in our own strength. I'll just say this, or I'll just go this way, just for a little bit, God, and I'm just going to add to it. And it leads us down the path that we're not supposed to be down. So we're going to look at John chapter 1 and look at a bunch of other scriptures today. So you're going to get a whole battery of them coming at you. John chapter 1, verse 1. Most of us are familiar with this passage. Most of you could say it without having to even look at it. In the beginning. In the beginning. Meaning there's a beginning and it's going somewhere. Meaning from the beginning, God had a plan. In the beginning. In the beginning was the Word. Now we're not going to get into the details of that. But in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the most beautiful man. In the beginning was the most excellent idea. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. This one was in the beginning with God, and all things through Him existed, and apart from Him, nothing exists which exists. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it or overtake it. There existed a man sent by God named John. This one came for a witness, that he should witness concerning the light, that all should believe through him. All. Not just some, but all. God desires that we're all brought into His family. That all should believe into Him. That all should believe through Him. The light. But He was not the light. But that He should witness concerning the light. The light was true, in which it lightens every man, and it was coming into this world. And in the world He was, and the world by Him existed, and the world knew Him not. And He came unto His own, and His own did not receive Him. But as many received Him, He gave them the authority, or the power, to be what? The children of God, to the ones believing in His name. Believing in His name. The ones who not from out of His blood, not from out of His will of the flesh, not from out of the will of man, but from out of God were born. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we saw His glory, glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of favor and truth. We'll pause there. You see, God from the beginning had a plan. God had a desire that we would all become children of God. Remember, how many of you can make God do anything? How many people can make God do something that God does not want to do? All right? It's like my children coming to me, and they can wear me down with their words. But when they try to wrestle with you, and you can just hold them at bay with just your arms, just your arms reach, and they're swinging with their little fists of fury, and they're trying to get you, and they can't do anything. No one can make God do something that He does not want to do. But what we see in His Word is that from the beginning He had a plan that He was sending His Son, that He would take on flesh, and that He would dwell among us so that we could see the glory of God and that we could become what? Children of God. God's plan for you was to bring you into His family. God's plan for you is that you would not be an orphan, but that you would be a son or daughter, and that through His plan you would have access to see His glory. You would have access to experience His goodness. At His right hand are pleasures forevermore, and in His presence is what? Fullness of joy, as Psalm 16 says. And this was a plan from the beginning. All through the Old Testament and unto the New Testament, unto the coming of Christ, God was orchestrating something beautiful. God was weaving a tapestry together with the strings of humanity, with the history of mankind, and making a masterpiece that was going to save all who looked upon it and called on His name. From the beginning, God had a plan. When humankind fell, God wasn't scared. God didn't have to come up and say, oh, dang it, what do I do now? What's plan B? He's looking at Michael the archangel. Did you have a plan? Michael's looking at him. I didn't expect him to fall. He looks at, the other archangel, Gabriel, and he was like, well, I was going to warn them, but you didn't let me go, And God had a plan. There wasn't panic in heaven when humanity fell, but he moved heaven, and he moved the earth, and he sent his Son to redeem all. That from the beginning, this is what we see. It starts, and I'm going to go through a litany of scripture, so just kind of hang on for this ride through the Old Testament. But it reminds us that through the centuries, in the millennia, God had not forgotten his plan for humanity. God has not forgotten the plan for your life. If God can weave thousands of years of history together to bring about his Son in the fullness of time, he can what? Bring your life together in one moment, in one turnaround, in one word, in one action. You see, in the beginning, in Genesis 3:15, what did God do? He came down, and after Adam and Eve fell, he promised him, and he said, I'm going to send a seed in Genesis 3:15. I'm going to give you a seed that's going to restore right relationship with me. Though I'm moving you out of the garden, it's not the end. This is not the end. Though the enemy struck you, though the enemy came against you, I have a plan for you to what? Overcome the enemy. I have a plan for you to overcome, even when you fell. Because a lot of times when we fall and when we sin, our first reaction is not to run to our Father, even though that's what we see little children do. When Lawson falls down, when he trips, when he's running just over his own feet, his first reaction is to what? Look up and to see where his parents are so they can scoop him up and heal his boo-boo. Or whatever he calls it, we have to kiss him, whether he's gushing blood or not. I have to kiss him. Right? But our first reaction in our moment of weakness, in our moment of falling, is we don't look to our Father. We try to hide behind a rock because we're ashamed, just like Adam and Eve. But how much should we learn from like the little child and say, where is my daddy in the midst of this moment? He's the only one that can save me. So in the beginning, God promised, Genesis chapter 3, right there, the third chapter of Genesis, that he had a plan for humanity. It continues on. Genesis chapter 12, God is speaking to Abraham. And he promises in this that all nations would be blessed through him. He says this, I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And pin you all the families of the earth, and through you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. You see, God had a plan. He promised Adam and Eve. He says, I'm going to send a seed. When he gets to Abraham, he says, this seed which I promised from the beginning, that which you have been crying out for, that which you have been praying for, in those moments where you think God is not with you or God is not looking, God has a plan just like he spoke to Abraham. Hundreds of years later, after Adam and Eve fall, or however long it was, he speaks to Abraham and he says, this seed, this promise of redemption is going to come through your line. Genesis 22, he continues to elaborate on his plan. Jesus as the coming sacrifice. Abram is taking Isaac up to Mount Moriah, because God had told him to sacrifice his son. And as he's putting Isaac on the altar, and as he's about to end his son's life, God calls out from heaven. An angel cries out from heaven and says, look, 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 stop what you're doing. There's a ram in the thicket. I am the God who provides. I am the sacrificial lamb. It's me who's going to bear the brunt of this. I'm going to erase sin. Genesis 22. The Messiah promised through Judah, so it continues on as God's plan. It's promised to Adam and Eve, it's promised to Abraham, now it's promised through the line of Judah. Genesis 49, as the sons are being blessed, this was given over Judah. Genesis 49:10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. The Messiah as a star out of Jacob, I see him now, but not, I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall come out of Israel, and it shall crush the forehead of Moab and break down the sons of Shechem. The Messiah is a greater prophet than Moses. So we fast forward. Humanity's still looking for the promise. Humanity's still looking for the seed. The children of Israel, what? Have now been released out of Egypt. They're looking for a deliverer. They think it's Moses, because he's delivered them out of Egypt. And God says, it's not Moses, but I'm going to send someone greater. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me, meaning Moses from among you. From your brothers, it is to him you shall listen. It is to him you shall listen. From the beginning, our plan was what? To listen to God, to allow him to speak to us. Because that's what he did with Adam and Eve in the beginning. He spoke to them. And he continues to speak to us today. Are you listening? Are you listening? We have these seasons as a reminder to what? Cause us to listen. And he goes on and he gives more elaboration on the plan. He goes on in 2 Samuel, and he says, now the Messiah shall come from the line of David. And the prophet says to David, when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. When he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men, with the stripes of the Son of Men. But my steadfast love, don't you love that? My steadfast love will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me, and your throne shall be established forever. Why? Because of the steadfast love that God had for his people. The seed had been promised to Adam and Eve. The seed then had been promised to Abraham. The seed then had been passed down through the line of Jacob. Fast forward hundreds of years to Jesse, who had a son named David, who was the least of the least, hiding on the back side of the hill, tending the sheep, wasn't even brought into the prophecies when Samuel came to the family looking for the king. Some of you are on the back side and you're hidden away, but God says, I'm raising you up for a specific moment, and until that time, you need to tend the sheep and keep your eyes on me, but I have a plan for your life. And he says that the scepter shall not depart from your house, David. The Messiah will be called the Son of God in Psalm 2. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry. The Messiah would be forsaken and pierced, but not abandoned, Psalm 22. For dogs encompass me, and company of evildoers encircle me. They have pierced my hands and feet and count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments and cast them for lots. The Messiah would be resurrected in Psalm 16, 8 through 11. The Messiah would be greater than David, Psalm 110. My Lord said to my Lord, as Jesus even quoted it, the Messiah shall be born of a virgin. Therefore the Lord will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Emmanuel, God with us. The Messiah will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, in Isaiah 9. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor. How many of you feel like you need a counselor? And not just any counselor. This counselor's name is Wonderful. It's not just your basic counselor where he's just listening to you and he's doodling on his little pad there. This counselor is wonderful. His name is Wonderful. He is the wonderful counselor. If you think he doesn't have a plan, you better understand who he is. You better look at his name. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And of the increase of his government of peace, there will be no end. Meaning, no matter what situation you come into, there is no throne higher than his throne. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time and forevermore. The Messiah shall come from the line of Jesse, Isaiah 11, verse 1. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his roots shall bear fruit. The Messiah shall be preceded by a forerunner. Isaiah 40, a voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. The Messiah will be the suffering servant. Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up. This is Isaiah 52 and 53. He shall be lifted up and shall be exalted. And as many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. I love that. Kings shall shut their mouths because of this humble, broken man who is given on a cross for us. Kings shall shut. People with authority, people who have power, people who think there's something on this earth will one day shut their mouth at the beauty of Jesus. The God who brought us into our family, they will all be astonished at his glory. For what? Isaiah 53, for he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried away our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was what? Pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And upon him the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. The Messiah shall be born in Bethlehem, Micah 5:2. But you, O Bethlehem, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah. So if you feel like you're too little, from you shall come forth for me one who is a ruler in Israel, who is coming forth from of old the ancient days. That's Micah 5:2. Zechariah 9:9. I'll begin to wrap this up. Rejoice greatly. The Messiah will ride on a donkey. O daughter of Zion, shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming, righteousness and having salvation. Humble and mounted on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. The Messiah will be pierced, Zechariah 12:10. And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and pleas for mercy, so that when they look upon me, on him who they have pierced, they shall mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and weeping bitterly over him as one weeps over a firstborn. The Messiah will be called out of Egypt, Hosea 11:1. The Messiah will be preceded by a messenger, Malachi 3:1 and 4, 5, and 6. Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me, and the Lord in whom you seek. And suddenly he will come out of his temple, and the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight. Behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts. And then silence. For about 400 years, from the closing of the Old Testament until the beginning of the New Testament, silence. You see, God for thousands of years was weaving this narrative together. He was speaking to his children. He was speaking to the ones he had chosen. He was speaking to the nation that was supposed to be the light in the darkness, and reminding them over and over again, the promise is coming. The promise is coming. I haven't forgotten. I'm unfolding my plan before you. Let me read this quote from the theologian Walter Kaiser, who his specialty is on Old Testament prophecy. And this is what he says: in addition to the real presence of Jesus as the angel of the Lord, the theophanies, J. Barton Payne listed some 574 verses in the Old Testament that had direct personal messianic foretellings. 574 verses. This is over thousands of years of history. It's astronomical. It's numerically almost impossible for Jesus to even fulfill these. Payne found that 127 personal messianic predictions involving some 348 verses that had any or all types of real and typological prophecies of Jesus' first or second coming. This number was exceeded only by Edersheim, who noted that in some 558 rabbinic writings in pre-Christian times, there were 456 separate Old Testament